Hello, hello, and happy marvelous Monday, everybody. I hope that you are all well. Please excuse my raspy voice. I had a phenomenal weekend. I was on vacation for a little bit, and I've missed you while I was away. So thank you so much for tuning in. I am not going to hold you long, but I hope that you've had an opportunity to check out the description for today as we are talking about costly mistakes that landlords and tenants make. So I'm going to share 3 tips today that I believe is going to be so helpful and so important for landlords as well as tenants to understand. And these are just things that I believe in the rental community that will make a tremendous difference. All right, so let me just acknowledge a few people who are here. I just want to say thank you so much for tuning in. For those of you who are watching by way of YouTube, hello, Aunt Lou from South Carolina. Thank you so much for tuning in, Auntie. Hello, Lynette. Thank you so much for tuning in from Charlotte, North Carolina. And thank you for sharing. Listen, I've been drinking water all day. Thank you for sharing. And thank you for giving me that tip, Lynette. But the hot water, the tea has not helped. But I'll be getting some much needed rest. So, today, if you have any comments or if you have questions, go ahead and drop it in the comment box. But today, I'm just going to share information. And my number one goal is this: to share information and to make sure that the information that I am providing today is clear and it's understandable, because my goal is to help the entire rental community. So if you know someone who is a landlord, this segment is for them. If you know someone who is a tenant, this is also for them. So your comments, your questions, your remarks, your observations, and feedback, I certainly welcome. You can go ahead and drop that in the comment section, and I will definitely respond to them accordingly. So, but before I get into it, I just want to also state that I am not an attorney. I'm not providing legal advice. I am, however, providing information that is helpful. It is industry best practices and tips that housing professionals are using, as well as tenants are trying to use to avoid making these mistakes. Hello, Mr. Ricks. Thank you so much for tuning in from Virginia Beach. I welcome you. I do appreciate you. So today I'm talking about 3 tips. 3 tips for landlords, as well as 3 tips for tenants. Now, these are the 3 mistakes that I commonly see in the industry as it pertains to landlords as well as tenants. Now, when it comes to being landlord, it's not really a cookie cutter type of business. Every style does not work for every person or every business, if you will, because it's all about location. Location is everything, right? So just depending on the geographical location, where the rental property is located, that will determine, usually, in addition to understanding the laws, sometimes that will determine how people and businesses operate, how they conduct business. But the most common mistake that I see with landlords nowadays is this: they do not run, and I've shared this on previous lives, okay? But the first mistake that I've seen, it is a common practice. I don't care where you go in the United States, sometimes even abroad, right? But the number one mistake that I see is this: landlords are not running adequate background checks on potential tenants. Now, that's going to be so important as we are coming out of the pandemic. We know that there are going to be a lot of people who are displaced, which means that there are going to be a lot more people who are looking to rent. And so landlords, if you have rental property or if you're managing someone else's rental property, please make sure that you are running adequate background checks. That's first and foremost, because what you don't know can or will hurt you. The worst thing a landlord can do is allow someone to rent the property where they have not conducted a background check. They don't know who's going to rent the property. They don't even know if they can income qualify. They don't even know if they have the character or the capacity to pay the rent or to take care of the rental property. All right. So the second mistake that I've seen, and this is something that I want landlords to really understand. All right. I live by the philosophy as a housing provider: right? I've been in the industry for 28 years, but as a housing provider, first and foremost, please treat it like a business. But now, in treating it like a business, you have to run it like a business, which means that there are things that you should be doing to make sure that your property is occupied. So, here's the second mistake that especially new landlords or inexperienced landlords they make. They have a habit sometimes of thinking that the property will always be rented, meaning that they've not taken steps. There's no marketing plan, there's no business plan in place to make sure that rental property is always occupied. There is no reason for a rental property to remain unrented or vacant for more than 30 days. It's no reason. There's no reason. So please understand that as a landlord, your job, your number one goal is to make sure that you have income coming in, because bricks and mortar don't pay rent, but tenants do. All right. So please don't think that that you will always have tenants in place, or that tenants will always be occupying the rental property. All right. And so here's a third mistake that landlords make. And I want you to really factor this in. Okay. If you are self-managing your rental property, please do not underestimate the cost of repairs. Repairs are ongoing. Okay. I have seen clients of mine, some of my colleagues, if you will, they have rental property and they have not maintained a maintenance reserve. They underestimate the cost for repairs. And so sometimes if a tenant, they'll call or they'll send an email, or maybe they'll go on the portal to say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Landlord, my water, there's water leaking, a water pipe burst, right? And it's flooded the property. And the worst thing that a landlord could do is not treat it like a business, okay? Because if you treat it like a business, it's going to pay you like a business, which means that you should have money in maintenance reserves for routine and emergency maintenance repairs. The worst thing that a landlord could do is have an emergency maintenance situation that happens at the property and they don't have the money, they don't have the reserves, they don't have the income to pay for it. All right. So please make sure that you understand the importance and that you definitely have a maintenance reserve for repairs. Make sure, number one, that you are charging enough. Okay. So there are some things that you should have in place to make sure that you're charging enough, because it's a business. It's not a hobby. So, with my philosophy, if you treat it like a business, it'll pay you like a business. If you treat it like a hobby, it's going to pay you like a hobby. So make sure that you value your rental property, you value your business, and you get pretty much a full understanding, a clear understanding that as long as you have rental property, there will be costs associated with maintaining the rental property. All right. So I also want to share some tips for tenants, because I think sometimes tenants do not understand that there's some homework, there's some research that they can do to help them to become great renters and pick the right property. Because here's the thing, everybody's not a good fit. So, and I get it. Sometimes people are so desperate to rent. Sometimes people are in really traumatic and challenging situations where they are eagerly looking for some place to live, and they will quickly choose a place, not doing any research, not doing any background checks on the rental property, the community, the landlord even, right? And so there are some things that tenants can do in advance, all right? But here are some mistakes that tenants make. Sometimes tenants will run the risk of being so eager and so quick to move into a rental property that they don't even look at the rental agreement. They'll move into the rental property, not understanding the lease. So they'll just go ahead and sign it, not understanding the terms of the contract, not understanding what they are obligated to do. And when that happens, and if something comes up, sometimes a landlord, owner, property manager, whoever, they'll say, well, it's in writing and you sign the lease. So you sign abiding by the terms of that rental lease agreement. And sometimes tenants don't read it, or maybe they'll read it and don't understand what they're reading and signing. So that is the number one mistake that I see that tenants make. They do not read the lease. They do not understand the terms of the rental lease agreement, and they don't even ask questions. It is okay for tenants to ask questions up front to make sure that you understand what you are signing, because it is a legally binding contract. It's a legally binding document. And just because you don't understand it, let's say you're a tenant and let's say you're in month number 4 or 5 or 6 and something happens. And now this landlord, your landlord is telling you, well, look at your lease because it's in writing. Just because you didn't read it or just because you didn't understand it doesn't mean that you're off the hook. So please, as a tenant, please make sure that you read the lease. Please understand what you are signing. And it is okay, like I said, to go ahead and ask those questions up front. I would rather have a tenant to ask a million questions, even if it takes an hour, right? But to make sure that they understand that lease. I definitely love educated tenants and renters. So that's number one. The second thing is this: when tenants are first moving into a property, I want you to always, please make sure that you always have a move-in inspection form completed. So whether the landlord gives it to you or you create one on your own where you just write down the condition of the property. And what does that mean? You're looking at every area of that rental property, every wall, every door, the floors. You want to open up all the cabinets. You want to turn the water on. You want to open the refrigerator, the top and the bottom doors. You want to open the stove, the oven door. You want to make sure essentially that everything is the way that it's supposed to be. Open the windows. Do they open and close? When you open the window, does it stay open by itself? Does it lock? Do you have screens? And so all of these things are important. Here's why. I had a young lady. She moved into a rental property and the landlord did an inspection before she moved in. But the landlord didn't do the inspection with the tenant. So the tenant moved in, and not even a week later, maybe a day and a half later, this young lady, the tenant, she called to say, my toilet is cracked and it's leaking. But she didn't just give the information like that. She says, oh, well, I'm not sure if y'all noticed, but the toilet is cracked and it's leaking water all over the floor. Well, I'm sure that that's something that the landlord would have noticed before the tenant moved in. But because there was no inspection sheet, that landlord, well, it was a property manager. The property manager could not even justify or document that the toilet was or wasn't that way when the tenant moved in. And so the owner was very upset, if you can imagine. Like, this tenant moved in on a Thursday, and on a Saturday, they're getting an email saying, oh, by the way, the toilet is cracked and leaking water. Somebody must have overlooked it. Well, the owner contacted me to say, well, Karissa, what should I do? And the first thing I asked this owner was, where is the inspection report? Did your property manager conduct the move-in inspection with the tenant? And because the property manager failed, the owner as well as the tenant, fortunately, it was a responsible property manager. And so what the property manager did was they went out and they purchased a toilet because they realized, uh-oh, I made a mistake. I didn't do the move-in inspection with this tenant. Because if that property manager had not done that, it would have been the owner's responsibility to replace a toilet because of a simple mistake. These are costly mistakes. And so that's why I'm sharing these tips. All right. And here's the third thing. Another mistake that tenants make is make alterations or make repairs without getting approval. Please make sure if you're going to paint a wall, even sometimes if you're going to put holes in the walls to hang pictures or to hang your TV, please make sure that you are getting the approval of your property manager, your owner, the landlord, before you make any type of alteration. I understand. Okay? I'm a housing professional. I've been in the industry. I've been in the game for a long time. I'm understanding. I have a little more sympathy than some of my colleagues and clients. Some of my colleagues and clients, they have no understanding. They do not want tenants putting holes in the wall. They do not want tenants painting. Okay? So please, as a tenant, don't make that mistake. Please always get approval up front. Get it in writing. Even if you call your landlord, please make sure that you follow up with an email so that that landlord can give you written consent or permission to say, yes, Mr. or Mrs. Tenant, you can or cannot paint, make alterations or repairs. And I've had a client who she was hot as Carolina fish grease because the tenant put a satellite on her house, on the front of her home. The tenant did not get permission. The tenant, she wanted the rental property to feel more like home for her. All right. So she made some alterations and she made some changes. She even went out and got a Ring doorbell. Everybody know, anybody who has the Ring doorbell, they know and they understand how convenient it is to have a Ring doorbell, because how that works is you get to see a video of who's at your front door before you even get up to see whether or not it's worth you opening the door, right? So this tenant, not only did she hang a satellite dish on the front of the house, but she had the Ring doorbell hardwired to this house. And the owner was so upset. The owner screamed and demanded that she remove the satellite dish. She demanded that this tenant remove the Ring doorbell. And I thought that was so unfortunate, because that's a situation that they both could have avoided. And it got really bad. It got really nasty because the landlord was very harsh and the tenant just flat out does not respect the owner. So these are just some tips of what not to do. 3 tips for landlords as well as 3 tips for tenants, because at the end of the day, like I said, it is a business. If you treat it like a business, it will indeed pay you like a business. If you treat it like a hobby, you're going to get out what you put in. So respect is the number one thing. Landlords, please respect tenants. Tenants, please respect your landlords. And I promise that if you live by some of these rules and just adopt some of the tips that I share, you may find yourself in a better predicament or a better position. Or maybe you're thinking about becoming a landlord or a tenant. Just use some of the tips that I'm sharing today so that you can avoid these type of situations. Hey, Kim, thank you so much for tuning in from South Carolina. Kim, you said true. Absolutely. You understand it, right? You get it. Another thing is security system. Absolutely. Tenants will install security systems because they want to feel safe. They want to feel secure. Please get approval. Please get permission from your landlord before you are making these type of changes. All right. So those are the tips that I wanted to share today. I do hope that the information I shared was helpful for you. This is what I do each and every Monday at 7:30 p.m. I do apologize about my voice. I know that it is really raspy, but I thank you for tuning in. And if you're watching the replay, let me say thank you so much for watching the replay. I hope that you would join me next Monday right here on Facebook or either YouTube at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It is my pleasure to share information. It costs absolutely nothing to get this information. And if you felt this information was helpful, please go ahead and share it with somebody else. Other than that, I'll stick around if you have any other questions, any comments, any remarks, observations, because here's the thing that I want to do. As we move forward with these Monday segments, I want to hear from you. I want to know subjects that are important, subjects that may be of a concern, any issues that you are having, whether you're a landlord or a tenant. So please feel free to inbox me or email me. My email address is karissaspan@gmail.com, karissaspan@gmail.com. I want to hear some topics that you feel might be important for you. All right. And again, this is what I do each and every Monday at 7:30 p.m. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope that you will join me next week right here, 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. I'm going to say bye for now.